And I went home that day to my mom and I said, Mom, Miss Bishop made me kneel on the rock today. And I don't think my mother processed it. Well, I know in reflection, she didn't process it. And she said, Rose, because to her, it just didn't seem real. So I went back to school the next day and we had 2 recesses every day. And do you know, Melva, for 30 days, this woman walked me out to that rock and made me kneel on the rock. Every day, 2 recesses a day. And every day I'd come home and I'd say, Mom, I'm bringing my mom, her plate. And I said, Mom, Miss Bishop made me kneel on the rock today. And my mom would say, it just was not registering. And she'd say, Rose, change the channel, because I was the remote back then, right? And so I would do the channels and I'd say, Mom, Miss Bishop, every day, I never stopped. I'd come home and say, Mom, Miss Bishop made me kneel on the rock today. And then when my psyche couldn't take it anymore, I said to Mom in the same tone of voice that evening, I said, Mom, Miss Bishop made me kneel on the rock today. And if you don't do something, I'm going to stone Mrs. Bishop tomorrow.
No, she's paying attention.
My mom woke up.
Yes. So what happened now?
So as I said, I told her, but I said it in the same tone of voice, right? I just slipped it in because I've had to lead my mom through a lot of things using my Canadian experience and knowledge to help her navigate our Canadian society. So when I said, Mom, if you don't do something, I'm going to stone Mrs. Bishop, I got her attention. Mm-hmm. Lickety split, the next day, who do you think came down to school at recess? That would be my mom. And sure enough, there I was, in the corner, kneeling on this rock. And so my mom went to the principal, the teacher came in the room, and my mom said, how, Mrs. Bishop, how could you make Rose kneel on the rock like this? I couldn't even believe what she was saying to me all this time. I had to come down and see for myself. And Miss Bishop said to my mom, I didn't know it was hurting her feelings. Yes. I told you the story in this manner because my mom was the custodian of the school. So not only was she abusing me as a student, mm-hmm. a child of color, she was abusing her co-worker's child. Mm-hmm. Suffice it to say, it didn't make me a worse child. It made me a more aware child. Fast forward, we did the early student acceptance test. When you do those tests in the beginning of school year to see where you stand in the classroom, and we had a split class. So in grade 4 and 5, the next year we had a split class, and I was right at the cusp of where the grade 5s and 6s were. The tests were handed out, but they were short one test. So they gave me a grade 6 test instead of the grade 5 test. I completed it because it had that Scantron. Remember the Scantron that you put over? Right. So I completed the test and I failed miserably. So they called my mother to the school again to have this conversation. And we're speculating that perhaps because I skipped grade 1, it is now caught up to me in my academics. And it was me, my mother, and the principal and the teachers that were in there. And I looked down at the test and I said, but that test says grade 6. So all the adults froze in the room, took another look, looked at me. We would dismiss the conversation for that day. They marked it and I had 100%. They marked it with a grade 6 Scantron. So they said grade 5 was useless for me. Mm-hmm. So I went straight to grade 6. Yes, it was interesting. So as I'm saying, I experienced life a lot differently than other people, but I also experienced the harsher things in life a lot more intensely, being a very intelligent and a very aware young girl. And back then I didn't have much hair. And I used to say, well, God gave me brains, because people are like, oh, picky head girl, oh, you don't have no hair. And I said, listen, with my brains, I can buy as much hair as I want. What are you gonna do? So I also had a smart mouth. I learned to have a very smart mouth just to defend myself in the society I was growing up in. Yeah, but it was interesting. I had an interest in upbringing and bringing myself up as well. Because
Right.
my mom, neither my mother nor my father went past grade 5. That's important to know. And so that was a limit that they could teach me. You know, they could only teach this little girl grade 5 stuff, up to grade 5 stuff, and then the world, right? So my mom wasn't academically smart, but she was socially brilliant. And I always say to her, Mom, I don't know who you would have been had you had the academics, you know, parallel to your brilliancy in society. Like, how does a mother of 7 who had her first child at 14 navigate to move to position herself to bring all her children to Canada, just to protect us and feed us on $50 a week back in the 70s? I don't know about that. That's, yeah, you know, they say yesterday's money is not as good as today's money, and today's money will not be as good as tomorrow's money. I don't know how my mom did it. But for her, because she understood my intelligence and my father did, I was her right-hand woman or a right-hand girl. She would take me when we go back to Jamaica, she'd take me to the builders. She would ask for the building blocks and she would get the price, and I would calculate in my head to see if the builder was charging my mother fairly. So the builder would give her the price for it, and she'd look down at me. She said, Rose? I said, no, mommy, no, or you like 7 more blocks, right? And the builder would look at me and I'd look at them and say, yes, you owe my mother 7 more blocks. Where my mother blocked them there, right? I had to. So, you know, so she relied on me. She really trusted me to guide her where, to basically enhance her where she needed enhancing when it came to navigating life.
And you know, Rose, just now when you were talking about giving the experience of, you know, talking with the builders in Jamaica, you did a lovely code switch.
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah. you could switch so nicely into Jamaican Creole. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. You know, most young people I know, you know, when they're very, very, like if they migrate at a very young age, some of them tend to, it seems as though they lose the, I don't know if it's deliberately or what, but some of them lose their home language. But in some cases, we know, yes, you know, they speak in the language or the accent or whatever of the country they're in, because, you know, you have to acculturate to some extent and to be able to, you know, be accepted in school and so on. But then at home, they would, some of them don't even want to speak the home language at home. You know, they lose it completely, whereas some are able to use both. So in your case, I noticed that even though you migrated at a very young age, you, I hear you with the Jamaican Creole. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I embrace me. I love being Jamaican. I love it. I love it. I mean, I did Caribbean calypso dancing when I was younger, and my teacher was Trinidadian. So it's not that I only just love Jamaican. I love the Trinis. I love the Grenadians. I get a kick out
Caribbean
of
culture.
what? I get a kick out of us, you know. So I adopt the different flavors of the Caribbean as I find suit. Because if I'm around my Trini people, I say, "Hey, come, let me go lime," right? And yes, and because I was in the calypso, I didn't even have very much rhythm until that teacher took a hold of me, Bernice Frank. You know, she's a phenomenal woman to this day. But I also learned the songs of the culture and how West Indians like to use these, you like to use this double speak, right? So we're a very funny, in a good way,
Right,
people,
double
right? We say things and we're so blunt in some of the things we say, oh, that girl, she does be doltish, right? And then when it comes to the Jamaicans, they always say, oh, Jamaicans are so aggressive and all of that. And when So when I would get in disagreements with people, I would love to pull in my Jamaica. And I said, look here, now, I come from Flanker top, me the baddest kind of district. So if you don't want no problem, you better not come test me, now. Don't come test me. Because, if Flanker people, you know what I'm not did it right now? I should have asked me if I come back, right? so I embrace us, right?
Yes, yes. And it's good, you have to keep your culture alive. That's a part of you. That's a part of who you are. And you really, it's good for you to keep it alive and I'm sure you feel more at home when you're there than if you were to have lost that completely. And then, you like, people don't know that, you probably wouldn't even understand them, or maybe pretending not to understand them.
Well, even like my children speak a little bit of Patois in the house because I do it. When if I get irritated with them, I say, look here, I don't want no problem that's also because me know say when me come from, me can't do them things to my mother. Hey, you know what, me call your granny, Oh, and they're like, what are you saying, Mom? No worry about it, go wash the dishes. And we get a laugh because I just throw it in to give them some spice, to make them enjoy and embrace being who they are. As West Indians, we're often told to smother our culture, to assimilate. I remember when I used to take pictures, if you notice how big my lips are, yes, they're one of my best qualities now. Because back then, the jokes I would get about my lips. I remember somebody saying to me, oh, what does that say on your lip? Oh, inflate 15 pounds. Really? Really? That my name is Rose, they used to call me Two Lips. Right? Two Lips, Chrysanthemum, all kinds of names. But those things, they didn't faze me because I saw behind the drama. I saw behind the curtain. And when I watch people going on vacation and dying to get that tan, I said, no, you're not going to fool me to make me think my homeland isn't great, because you guys go there at the drop of a dime. So I just loved being Jamaican. And you take the good, you take the bad. So I took the goodness I could from my country. I buy the fruits. I find the West Indian stores. I support them because I want to bring that tradition, that culture into my home. I see every other race preserve their culture. And for me, I need to preserve it in my household as well.
Right. Yes. That's good. That's very good. And we're actually into another aspect, because when you mentioned family, I know you now have a blended family.
I do.
So how is that, and how, in terms of culture sharing and cultural awareness and appreciation, how are you able to work through that in your blended family? Because now, we have Canadian, you have Jamaican, and then
Dominican.
Yes.
Yes. So I have, my husband is Dominican. We've been married 2 years, together for 4. Before we met, I didn't speak a lick of Spanish. And he didn't speak a lick of English, probably 6 words each of each other's language. We met, we fell in love in a beautiful place. Ed Sheeran has a song that says, people fall in love in mysterious ways, maybe by the touch of a hand. That was it. That's our love story. People listen to it, they're like, wow. I'm like, I know. So I knew when he touched my hand, I was like, wow, where you been? It was just, I was so surprised. I was like, and we've been together ever since that day. Thanks to Google Translate and WhatsApp, we were able to communicate, because he's actually still in the Dominican. He should be up by the end of May, him and the children. So, all praises go up. But we communicated using Google Translate and WhatsApp. And I know if this was 10 years ago, I wouldn't have this relationship, because I'm frugal. I'm not buying any calling cards. I don't have that commitment. But about 2 weeks after we met, a friend of mine, a colleague, a flight attendant friend of mine, put up a post that CNN had a sale on language programs. down from $300 to $29.95 for 5 languages.
Mm.
I said, my God, you are good. I bought it. And so I studied Spanish and then immersed myself into Spanish by going there and taught myself Spanish and then taught my husband and my stepchildren English.
Mhm. Okay.
So that's how I made it work. And I'm telling you, it's like the best thing right now. It's the best thing. Yo no sabe lo que yo puedo hacer sin mi esposo y mi hijo.
Mhm.
I don't know what I'd do without my husband and my other children. Te quiero. I love them. I love them. Con todo mi corazón. When I hear myself speaking Spanish, I'm so impressed. I'm like, who is that? It's me. Sometimes I'm so shocked at myself. I'm like, who knew at 47 years old, I'd pick up Spanish and
Well,
become fluent.
age is that, as a language teacher myself,
Yes.
I can tell you that, people say they put age as a barrier, but it's not. As long as you have, the right, the motivation is there.
Love.
Motivation is there. And, in your case, you had really strong motivation.
Yes, I did.
Yes, you're going to, you had a reason for wanting to learn it. And so you went ahead and yes. So,
yes.
So congratulations. And I'm sure, as
Thank
time goes on, you're going to even keep improving. And yes.
Well, he speaks very well now. And when I taught him, I taught him a lot. And then he also goes on the internet and he loves to look at the American lifestyle, the North American lifestyle. And we got in a disagreement one day and he said to me, baby, I'm human. I said, I never taught you that. I did not teach you that. So you see how we adapt, right? As when we get as you said, when we get this thirst or this motivation for something, we do what it takes.
Oh yes, oh yes. And so how about your stepchildren? Are they and your husband, are they is there any way in which they're learning anything about the Jamaican part of your life, your culture?
Yes, absolutely. Because I didn't mention before, but I am a flight attendant as well with WestJet. And I'm able to see the world and show my children the world. And we have authentic learning. So even though my husband and stepchildren are in another country, since we can't bring them to us, we brought ourselves to them. During the pandemic, it was a blessing because we were able to do remote learning. My children were able to do remote learning. We all brought our laptops. I did remote work. And we were down there spending time together, really, really impressive and unbelievable times together as a family, living outside of Canada, but inside of the Dominican Republic. So the cultures, they didn't clash. They blended like a really good smoothie. It was wow. Yes, it was beautiful. And the most interesting part was that our fruits and vegetables were the same.
Yes, so because they will have the Caribbean, what
yes,
you
yes. Yes, I was so impressed. And so my husband would bring me guinep, and they call it guinepa. And I was like, oh my God, it's my favorite. And the one thing though I missed, because the national dish of Jamaica is ackee and saltfish. They do cook a lot of saltfish in the Dominican, but they call it, yes,
bacalao.
Bacalao, right? And so I would say, wow, I wish I had ackee. That's the one thing I don't see here. Then one day in December, I was walking down the street. I've walked down that street many times, but I just never noticed the foliage. I looked up and lo and behold, Melville, what do you think was there?
An ackee tree.
An ackee tree. An ackee tree. I said to my husband, oh my God. So I said to him, I need you to ask that neighbor for some ackee because they don't eat it. So he knocked the neighbor's door, and the ackee tree wasn't actually rooted in the ground. It was in a pan. So he knocked the neighbor's door and he said, my wife, she's from Jamaica. That's one of her national fruits. And she just wants to know if she can have some. And the neighbor knew my husband from he was a child. And she was like, Meme, of course. He picked them. she gave them to me. She said, "You're going to bring me back some with bacalao, right?" I said, "Yeah, when I make it, I'm going to bring you some." Right. And I was able to get ackee, and I made ackee and saltfish the next day. And then, once you see something, you can't unsee it, right? Because then I was walking down to the beach, and lo and behold, what do I see by the beach?
Another ackee tree.
Another ackee tree. And I've been going there for 4 years and have not seen an ackee tree. And then in the space of 4 or 5 days, I see 2 ackee trees. So yeah, it was nice for me to tie in our culture like that.
Let's just talk now about the importance of sharing. You've told us a lot about about immigrant experiences, your mom, migrating and leaving her children back in Jamaica for a couple of years, and coming back, bringing them to Canada, and your experience as a young child growing up as an immigrant. And I know that you're working on a special, something special that's going to actually share those experiences. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, and why you think it's so important to share immigrant experiences.
Yes. So my mother and I have had extensive conversations. I want to know it all, Tell me, Mom, how did you do this? Just because my resiliency, while I know my own individual contribution, I know that strength came from somewhere. I didn't just wake up with this, it was a gift, but somewhere in my lineage, I know we come from a line of warriors, from a line of soldiers, and not because of a physical fight, but fighting in a way to advance ourselves and to do better each day. So my mom's going to be 88 this July. Bless her soul. There's no, as you were speaking about, age is nothing but a number. There's no 88-year-old I've met that's like my mom. She's full of life. She's vibrant. The only thing she doesn't do is really weightlift, but she's got all that spunk and all that charisma. And I want to capture things before a time may come when the information is no longer accessible to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked her questions. I said, "Mom, where are we really from?" And then she tells me, and we grew up in a place called Hog City in Jamaica. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's where the hogs and the pigs were raised. And I thought, I came from Hog City. That's not even something to be hailing out, because that's like the worst of the worst. But then my mom explained to me that when she was a young mother, she would sit by the roadside breaking rock stones with rock stones. So she'd use a bigger rock stone to break the smaller rock stone and make these piles of rocks. And her second son would be beside her with his pile of rocks, breaking rock stones. And I said, "Well, what was that for?" It was because the men that would make the mortar with the cement and the rocks for building, they would come by and they'd weigh the rocks that you've cracked and pay you according to, to what they thought it was worth weight-wise. And some days the men wouldn't come, so you'd break rock stones in vain, right? And to port those rock stones back home, that's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
You walk to the roadside, and now to walk back and drag rock stones, I don't know about that. I might have had to hide those rock stones and hope they're there the next day. So when she was telling me that story, just the imagery was just mind-boggling. I was thinking, wow, my mother was breaking rock stones to feed us. That's Malcolm X version by any means necessary. And my respect for my mom just keeps growing. And it's not inflated, it's just accurate. My respect for this woman, I tell her all the time, if I live half the life you live, Mom, I would be a great person. If I contribute half of how you contribute to your family, if I'm half as dedicated, I would have known I did a good job. Because to me, she's so phenomenal, so phenomenal. And that being said, that leads me to a documentary that I'm working on called Immigrant Sacrifices. Because I look at my mom, I know, I mean, just the thought of her even makes me teary-eyed. It makes me well up because she's 5'3", 5'3", but her stature, 6'11", 7'4". She's that kind of grand. So I'm collecting the stories of immigrants and bringing their sacrifices to the forefront. You know, I don't even know if that's a real word. They call it willix when the water gets into the cuticle and creates damage to the nail because her hand is immersed in water,
Yeah, I
cleaning
believe
for.
in Guyana we used to say Whitlow, something.
See,
Yeah, Whitlow.
that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And so she has a finger like that.
Mm.
And when I look at it, I look at it with endearment and I help trim it. And I know that finger carries so much history, so much trials and tribulations. And I've never heard her cry about it. I just would see her paring it, paring it, paring it. And so I said, I can help. And I remember when she had stomach problems and she would have nausea and she would throw up in the middle of the night. And there was a point where I was the only one left at home after all my siblings moved out. And I would have to get up in the middle of the night because I would know that sound. And even though I had school, I'd know that sound. And I know my mom is in there sick because a surgery that she had in years, they ended up tying up her intestines, right? And causing her not to be able to digest greasy foods. And so she ate leftovers. If she ate anything with too much grease, sure enough, that night, my mom would be in so much pain. And I'd hear her and I have to go there with a bucket and change the bucket. And for that, I have a weak stomach, but I didn't have a weak stomach then, if it makes sense. When it was time, I did what had to be done. You know, my mom would eat the worst cut of the meat so that we could have meat on our plate. Those are the sacrifices. It needs to be known that woman, she deserves all the glory, right? And mother of 7, and she's stellar. I don't even want her to know I say this about her. I'm joking. I tell her all the time. I say, Mom, I could never, if I lived 1,000 lifetimes, I could never repay you for how good you were to us. You did the best with what you had. And for that, I'm grateful. You've taught me what to do.
That was your mom is really the one who inspired you to go ahead with preparing this documentary. And so, and as you said, it's her story, but then you're going to also have the stories of other immigrants and their sacrifices.
Yes, of course.
So I am looking forward to that documentary. Just please tell me when it's ready. Tell me how to access it.
Thank you.
You know, I would really love to see it. And so, as we wrap up, Rose, what are your final thoughts about the importance of appreciating other cultures?
That being said, I do immigration. I'm an immigration consultant as well as other designations. I'm paralegal, I'm a real estate broker, and I've wrapped it into one as a one-stop settlement shop. I work in communities. My passion is people. So I worked in communities as a community worker, but now I just consult because I've done the groundwork. And what you want to do when you work with communities is work yourself out of a job. You never want to be the constant helper. You want to enable people's empowerment so they can help themselves. And so in the mornings they get up and they don't think, Rose is not here, we can't do this. No, I want to get up and think, man, I'm glad Rose taught us how to help ourselves. So in doing so, I'm a humanitarian first. I don't look at our people, our people in this world and think, I'm not going to help that person because they're Indian. I'm not going to help that person because they're dark Black. I'm not going to help that person because they're Chinese or that person because they're white. I respect the richness of our diversity. And so I meet you and help you where I see you. I love hearing stories. Just today I called a South Asian girl that I met when she was job hunting, when I was doing a retention specialist for Employment Ontario. And I check on her because I really believe in her. And she said, no one has ever genuinely checked on me, Rose. I said, I saw something in you. And my heart and my mind says, keep in touch with you. So the richness of people's culture is important because we're scattered, but we're also together. We're together in struggles. Look how we cry for people we do not know in Ukraine. Look how our heart breaks for missing children. Look, as a mother, Melva, the most interesting, the most magical thing about being a mother to me was that when I was breastfeeding, if a baby that didn't belong to me cried, my breast would engorge. Ah, come on, please. How? You
Yes.
can't tell me we're not connected. How? So share your stories. Let's build together, because there's a group of people in this world. There's a push of people in this world that just love each other, that love one another and want an opportunity to love unconditionally. Let's keep a part of that push, keep a part of that momentum and part of that spirit. It's magnificent.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rose. That is a beautiful note on which to end today.
Yes.
And viewers, let's do what Rose says, okay? We're going to just keep pushing, keep loving one another. Remember, we're all one, okay?
We're all one people.
And we should, really work on appreciating one another. So thank you so much, Rose, for being here today, taking some time to talk with me, to share your stories, share your stories with the viewers. And to the viewers, thank you so much for watching. We're going to see you soon as we meet more people and share their experiences and get to know them on another episode of Our Culture to the World. Thanks again, Rose.